And I turn over to our keynote speaker. I've noticed since he'll tell you how long he's been coaching, international, renowned debate coach. He travels the world with his debate team at St. John's University, debate coach, incredible debate educator, working urban debate leaders around the country, and so we're so honored. Thank you for sharing your moment with us.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks, Eric. Thanks, Aubrey. Thanks to the New York City Urban Debate League staff. I was just telling somebody sitting over there, I was talking about my first experiences in New York City Urban Debate was when I was a new university director here in New York, and I came out to judge the round robin, and I thought, oh, this will be nice high school debate. This will be relaxing. It'll be chill. But what I ended up seeing was some of the highest quality debating I've ever seen in my life was New York City Urban Debate League students debating in policy, and not just sort of a parroting something a coach told them, but in my conversations with them in the critique of the debate, deep understanding of complicated issues that a lot of high-level university students would have trouble with, things like post-colonialism, post-structuralism versus postmodernism. They were very familiar with these ideas and how to use them. And so that's a real credit to people who I think are the educators who work with the Urban Debate League here in New York. So you're in very good company and very good hands with some of the finest educators. But what I want to talk about today is this old idea that every debate speech or debate address that I've ever been to, like you're in the debate world for 5 minutes and someone's like, debate's very powerful. Debate's powerful. It changes lives. And I'm like, this is such a trope and such a big question. Maybe we should investigate it a little bit. Because when we think about that, I mean, you're in the debate family 5 minutes, people are like, debate's powerful, everyone's like, yes. And as teachers of debate, we're very familiar with the fallacy of the begged question. So it's like, what is power? What is debate? What are these things? So this is something I've been thinking about lately, is the power debate is a very unusual kind of power, and a very sort of a strange kind of power. And I'm going to talk about that through 3 different concepts that extend through debate education. And the first is the idea of the game. And the second is the role of controversy. And the third is a story about the painter and the plumber. And it's a kind of a classroom story. We'll get to that. I'll explain what that means in a little bit. The first thing is, I think debate makes us step back and consider what it is to educate. And I want to share a thought from the famous American educator Miles Horton, who was the director of the Highlander School in Tennessee. He's the person who founded what we know as the Freedom Schools, which in the 1960s, the Civil Rights Movement, the Freedom Schools taught people how to advocate for their voting rights, how to challenge Jim Crow rules at the voting booth and things like that. And Miles Horton was sort of the developer of this, because he called them citizenship schools at first. And Miles Horton had this very, very, very good thing when he would talk about this. He would say, education is not certification, and it's not accreditation. Education is something distinct from those things. They are interrelated, but it's a big, big problem when we think of certification or accreditation as education, as the total of education. Those things are very important, Horton would say. And in fact, people who are oppressed or people who are in poverty gravitate towards these things, towards universities, gravitate towards higher education, because they know the importance of certification in breaking the cycle, and accreditation of breaking the cycle. They understand that. But they come to these things as people who can participate in education. And they are educated people. But from a certification mindset, we don't think of it. And I think this is an important distinction, because as people who are going to teach debate, you are going to feel a little bit isolated on your campus. You're going to feel like the odd person out sometimes. Because a lot of the people who work in education have made this confusion that Horton has us think about. What is the difference of education for these things? Education, I think, is the ability to speak and listen to other people in order to find out what problems are there and how we can address them together. This is what Miles Horton taught in Tennessee. This is what I think debate is really, 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 really good at doing. Really good at doing. So what is the education that we're involved in? Is it, a lot of times in debate education, we think of ourselves as teaching a format, or a set of rules, or a set of practices that help students find success. But this is all a means to an end. The larger goal of all these things, this is kind of the certification. This is kind of the accreditation, is being able to know, how to link Turnitin or something like that. But the larger question of education is, how do these tools help us in addressing the problems that we all face or that we all share together? What we teach when we teach debate, and the power of debate, comes from the fact that what we're all teachers of, and what you will be teachers of in debate, is you are teachers of helping people become comfortable with uncertainty, and helping people accept uncertainty as normal and welcome in human affairs. We are really, really up against the wall. At no other time in my career has uncertainty been more unpopular than it is today, where what we see in political discourse is a real race to the facts. And if we don't have the facts, it's a real race to the alternative facts, right? It's a real race to the news, a race against the fake news. So certainty is an unquestioned value in our society to our detriment as people who work in the political and who work with education and who work and know that it is a virtue to be able to say to someone else, well, I don't know. But that's a very unpopular position. In debate, we teach students how to be comfortable and how to accept uncertainty in daily life. I want to talk first a little bit about, I don't know how successful I'm going to be in getting this idea across to you, but I'm happy to talk about it. But the point of today is to give you sort of 3 ideas about how debate in the classroom and teaching and being a debate educator is a little bit different than other things. And the first is this idea of the game. I'm sure you've heard people talk about debate. Well, debate's like a game. It's a game that we play with information. It's a game that we play with words. It's a game that we play with argument. And I'm not the first person to suggest that debate has a lot in common with chess. I don't know if you guys have studied chess, you like playing chess. I know that there's this great, one of my former students who's now getting a Ph.D. came and stayed with me this summer, and he showed me this great website called chess.com. It's like an open source chess website that ranks everybody. It's free to play, and everybody mods it and does whatever they want, and they create weird variations on it. It's really cool. And it reminded me a lot about debate and how we change things, like here at New York City Urban Debate League. We change things to fit our students in the way we want to play and all that. One of the most famous chess players in the world is Gary Kasparov. I'm sure you've heard of Gary Kasparov, not from his chess exploits. He played the very first supercomputer, Deep Blue, and tried to beat it. He lost once, and there was a draw, and he won once. I don't know if that means computers are going to take over or not. And then you might know him from his political work against Vladimir Putin. And he's been arrested. He's had all kinds of things. He's like a very vocal political person. He's written a lot of books on chess, and the most interesting one was one he wrote in the 1980s. Very early on, he was coming up as a real chess superstar. He went to a chess academy, very much like how your students are going to come to you to learn debate. And his instructor put on the board a chess position that blew his mind as a young person and really set the game up for him differently. I want to show that position to you now as kind of a, I don't know how much you know about chess, but we're going to see. Okay, so this is from Kasparov's book. What Kasparov, when he came to chess, he thought, the powerful pieces are powerful, so those are the ones that make the difference. But in this position, his instructor was like, what does the white king do here? Here you have 3 black pawns pinning the king down. The king is supposed to be this incredibly powerful piece that's the center of the game. He said, once I saw this position, the entire world flipped over for me. And that the small pieces could, by virtue of the rules that make the larger pieces powerful, win the game. He said the world flipped over for me, and not only did I want to be good at the strategy of playing chess, I wanted to play a beautiful game. I wanted my games to be beautiful, and I wanted there to be pleasure in the playing of it, because this made me so happy as a young student that my instructor showed me this position. What did, Kasparov didn't see a big strategic trick he could pull on people. He saw what we might consider an accident. What did he see in this position? He saw something more than chess is about mastering the rules. It's about challenging those rules from inside the rules in order to make incredible moves that change the way we see things, that change the way we see the relationships between power and disempowered pieces. This is a moment that I would say we're all aspiring for when we teach debate, when we're teaching our format, whatever format it is you teach. This is the moment that we want to aspire for with our students, because this is the moment where uncertainty becomes a really powerful, valid, incredibly valued, passionate thing, where they look at it and they're like, oh yeah, that is awesome. When you show them that argument, or they have that practice debate, and everybody's like, look at what Bob did, that was awesome, that speech was awesome. And everybody's like, yeah. Now it's not a brilliant example of using the rules to create a strategy to win a game in the mid-game or the end-game, or opening moves in chess. But it's a moment where the rules reveal some beauty about the act and the art behind it. That's what we're going for. To see the limitations for what they really are. Opportunities sometimes. When I compare debate to a game like chess, or when we look at Kasparov saying the rules helped him really see, open up chess instead of closing it off, opening it up, we arrive at one of the oldest controversies in debate in the United States, and that is it appropriate to talk about debate as a game? This is a very old controversy. The very first time this comes up is in the pages of a journal I'm sure you all have on your coffee table, the Quarterly Journal of Public Speaking. The 1917 issue, yes, 1916 issue. I'm sure we were all familiar with this. Where William Hawley Davis, who's a debate coach at Case Western State Reserve University, that's a mouthful. I'm sure they've shortened that by now. Some PR person came in and were like, no, we can't put that on that. We can't put that on the brochure. He wrote a piece called Is Debate Primarily a Game? And it sparked a controversy that's now over 100 years old. I was just at a conference last year where university debate professors were having the same conversation. Is this the right way to talk about it? Davis argued in 1916 that it's not appropriate to talk about what we do in debate as a game for two reasons. First, he didn't like being associated with his athletic director. He's like, I'm doing something more than what the coaches are doing, and please let me know if you think of me as one of the athletic coaches, because I'll resign. This is what he says in the essay. It's pretty hilarious. I'm sure we share a certain agreement with Professor Davis. And then secondly, he says it trivializes the importance of debate in democratic society because it likens it to something that you would only do for amusement. He's like, it's sort of like doing rifle shooting, going to the rifle range or the gun range and not really paying attention to the fact that you have this incredibly destructive weapon that you're using as a toy. And you're using it for fun. And this is incredibly destructive. Now, chess doesn't have the same problem we have in debate when we're trying to sell it. And chess is always deeply connected to things like critical thinking, strategic thinking, spatial relation. You can make chess fit any curriculum, really. In fact, Kasparov and others have argued that chess should be part of the Common Core curriculum. And they've made that argument. They've done incredible demonstrations where you have young grandmasters play the simul, like where you play 30 people at once. You've seen chess masters do this. And they walk around the inside of the table and they beat everyone. And they're like, yeah, that's something you have to do to be an international master. You have to be able to do this. Or play a blind game where you're like blindfolded, you can't see the board, and they just call the moves out to you. And then I've seen some grandmasters do both, where they play against an entire class of students, 20 students, and they play blind, and the students all discuss what move to make next, and they still beat them. They're like, how did I beat you? It's not, they're mastering the rules of it. They're not thinking of it as this sort of uncertain art. That's the point I'm trying to make today. And that's what Kasparov saw in that early game, which is what catapulted him to international stardom. And this game metaphor, I think, works well if we think of it like that. The power of debate comes from this understanding that there are these rules, and there are pieces that are stronger than other ones. But it is uncertain in context what these things are going to mean, or what's going to win. There's never such a thing, and I'm going to reiterate this again and again in my conversation today with you. There's never such a thing as a bad debate. You hear people say, oh, that debate was really bad. How was your debate? No, it was really bad. No such thing. Because everyone is an iteration of the possibilities of uncertainty. Every debate is an iteration of the rules. Every debate is an iteration or a hegemonic move on the rules of debate that we can question. We can say, is that relationship as unidirectional as we thought it was between those two pieces of evidence or that argument? It really does change minds like that. Chess is similar in that way. But in debate, I think there's such little distance between what we count as an argument in daily life and what counts as an argument in our classroom or in our debate that it's very, very hard for that distinction to be made. So what I say is, we're teaching uncertainty. We're teaching to be comfortable saying, I don't know what this is. I don't know the value of this argument. That kind of thing. Our subject, we could say, and I do think there are some teachers that we have something in common with, and this is going to preempt that at the end when we talk about who we have the most in common with in our pedagogy, is sometimes people say, what do you teach? And I say, I teach don't know. I teach don't know. And like, what is that? And I'm like, I don't know. That's what I teach. And at the university, this isn't a very popular attitude to take among other professors. It's like, well, what is it that... But this is an old question too. It's like the rhetorician. The person who teaches rhetoric, the person who teaches persuasion, the person who teaches speech and argument is suspicious. The very first person who called us suspicious was Plato. You don't get more powerful enemies than this in Western philosophy. Right? What is it that you teach, Gorgias, who was probably the #1 debate coach of ancient Athens? It's like, I teach people to make the weaker cases stronger. I teach people how to speak well. To which Socrates says, but what if they don't really know what they're doing, right? Like, what if the doctor is one of your there's an actual doctor trying to get the job, and then someone who speaks well about it, who's going to get it? Or so, well, the person who speaks, my student will get it. So, well, this is a problem. So it's always been under suspicion. It's always been under suspicion. But with someone like that, the certainty is the reason it's under suspicion. If we abandon that, we're going to be just fine. Say, we are teachers of don't know. We'll make you comfortable with not knowing. We'll make you comfortable with uncertainty. The second thing, besides the game, and besides this controversy of the game, and the aesthetics of the game, the second thing I want to bring up for you to think about is a metaphor for what we do, and it's the metaphor of the forest ranger. The forest ranger has become a political symbol since the election of Donald Trump. Right? This is a really interesting phenomenon. When park rangers said, we're not going to follow the regulations of the Department of Interior, we're going to keep tweeting, and we're going to keep putting out publicity. And then they created these Twitter accounts like Alt National Park Service Badlands or whatever. I don't know if you follow these things politically, but it's fascinating. And it created a whole bunch of memes. I'm sure you know what memes are. You work with young people. I do too. I was in a meeting with new freshmen yesterday over at St. John's, and I was like, what do you guys want to talk about? And one of the girls was like, what's everybody's favorite meme? And this created a 45-minute conversation. I think it's great. I was a little lost. It's every year I teach at the university, I feel more and more like an old person. I'm sure you can sympathize. And I'm like, what is that you're listening to? And they're like, oh, it's so-and-so. I was like, is that music? Is that, okay, just checking. So we were talking about, so these memes about forest rangers have appeared, about how they keep us safe from forest fires, equating political discord with the forest fire and normal politics with the forest. That's really fascinating, because forest rangers, in their theory and what they study, are in disagreement as to the role of fire in the healthy forest, as we should be in the role of controversy, in the role of disagreement, in the role of something that doesn't look organized or well-disciplined in the debate classroom. There are three different perspectives one can have on fire from the perspective of forestry. One is total suppression. That is, anytime this happens, it's a disruption. It needs to be extinguished. It needs to be completely suppressed. And we need to go around and make sure that things are not flammable. This is an attitude of a lot of teachers I had in my life, which is anytime the students start to get really passionate and into something, they're like, okay, this isn't the place for that. This isn't the place for that. Be quiet. Let's get back to work. Da-da-da. This is the fire suppression theory of student opinion sharing. The second level is fire prevention, which is it's okay sometimes to have a fire in the woods, but only under very controlled circumstances, only for that one purpose, and then we're going to put a bunch of water on it, dig it up, put the dirt on it, make sure it's completely out. And I think this is the way debate is often taught in school classrooms across the U.S. and also in the world, and other places I've seen it too, where debate and disagreement is permitted in these incredibly controlled circumstances, and then we're sort of done with it. The problem with that is debate's relationship with critical thinking. We have a critical thinking crisis in society around the world. And I think it's a crisis that's perpetuated by the fact that we do a really great job of teaching critical thinking as a skill set, but we don't do a very good job of teaching it as a culture, as a cultural practice, like symphony or theater appreciation, where you would expect to see it outside of a controlled classroom. The fire suppression model, or the fire prevention model, which is the most popular model of teaching argument and political conflict and stuff, has made a lot of people think, under a controlled situation, like something that looks like a classroom, it's okay to have debate, deliberation, and disagreement. But out there, it's not really okay to have it. It's a disruption. It's a problem. It can get out of control. It's destructive. The third perspective, and the one that you probably will share with me, since you're debate educators, you're already part of the family, is fire ecology, which is a very radical position where a lot of fire ecologists will say, the trees have as much a right to be in the forest as the fire. The fire is as natural as the trees. And you think, that's a weird position. But when you look to some of the evidence, it becomes kind of persuasive. There are certain trees whose pine cones will only release seeds if they're heated to a certain temperature. There's a species of turtle that lives, I think, in Australia, it could be a U.S. turtle, that will only lay its eggs in ground that is a certain warmth, that is the warmth after forest fires come through. So you see through fire suppression and fire elimination, they've had kind of a despecies of this because they kill every fire they can. So how do we become good fire ecologists in our classroom? How do we allow that to happen, and how do we do that? Well, it's uncertainty again. That we're okay not necessarily knowing where this lesson is going to end up or where it's going to go. That we're kind of okay with students burning a little bit after the debate's over, when they go home, when they go back to their house, when they go to their friends. It's still kind of smoldering away. And that fire brings new trees. It brings new things. Everyone comes to you fully formed. All your students come to you fully formed. They have experiences. They have people they care about as much as the people you care about in your life. They have all these controversies, things they're worried about. And I know I'm as guilty of it as anybody. Is when I'm in front of a class, I don't think about that. I think, I have to correct them. I have to make them better. And I don't think of them bringing all this material too. That's all old growth forest. How can debate burn that away so that we can have new seeding, new plants, and have new trees grow, new growth happen? I had a debate student several years ago. She graduated a long time ago. And she always said that I burned her forest to the ground in class. And now she could approach things differently. But every so often she'll text me, usually about the beginning of school, and say, whose forest are you burning today? To try to keep me kind of thinking about this. Whose forest are you burning today? Now this is very flattering, but it's not me that's doing it. I just don't put out the fire. They come with all the kindling. They come with all the fuel. And all I have to do is kind of say, okay, I'm just going to let that simmer and see what comes out of it. See how they handle the disagreement. The reason the fire ecology model is so important for debate education, I think, is because we as a country always say, when controversies come up, we need more debate on that. We need more discussion on that. This is what the media tells us, right? Every time you turn on the mass media, oh, we need more discussion and debate on it. But where in our lives do we receive formal training on how to do that well? This would be it, right? And how formal is what we're doing here, right? How supported is this by Common Core? How supported is this by our districts? How supported is this by our principals? I used to teach high school debate in Texas, and it was just not very well supported. My principal, after we were going to the NSTA Nationals, like, how excited should I be? Like, no conception, no context for what it was that we were doing. And it's that kind of environment that we're sort of working against. This is something to be ready for. But if someone is a teacher of don't know or uncertainty, then fire ecology helps us get more comfortable with that. And it's a difficult thing to accept, but it works pretty well to let the fire kind of burn. The last thing I'll share with you before I close today is a story of the painter and the plumber. And this is a good teaching story. It happened in Long Island. A painter had a leak in his house, and he called the plumber. When the plumber arrived to check on the leak, the floor had a giant canvas on it. One of these huge canvases you see over in the Metropolitan Museum. In fact, this canvas is in the Metropolitan Museum Park. Big canvas on the floor, and he wasn't sure how to get to the bathroom to check the leak. And the painter comes in, he's like, don't worry, you can't hurt it, just walk across it. This made him like even less more willing to walk into the room. He's like, no, you can't hurt it, walk across it. So he did. And some people say you can still see where these things are in this canvas if you go over to the Metropolitan Museum of Art. So the painter is Jackson Pollock, you might have guessed by now, who was very famous for doing these drip paintings. I don't know if you've probably seen, they just look like someone spilled something across the canvas. So he would take his brush and do this, or he'd pour paint across it like that. But what a fascinating thing to have this incredible influencer of American art say on one of his giant works, to say to some plumber, walk across it, you can't hurt it. Walk across it, you can't hurt it. This is incredibly insightful for us as teachers when we're teaching debate. Walk across it, you can't hurt it. This goes back to what I said earlier, there's no such thing as a bad debate. What Jeffrey Sirk, in his book, Composition is a Happening, argued Jackson Pollock had understood, is that the canvas was a record of art that had happened above it. When we put it on the wall, we think of it, oh, that's the art. But Pollock had no sense like this at all. I'll show you the... There it is, yeah. Nice and big. Imagine coming in, you're like, I gotta go over to the bathroom, I gotta walk across this thing. I mean, I don't know, I kind of would be like, well, it looks like a spill anyway. But it's very pretty. You think, oh yeah, I could do that. No, you can't do that. You can't do that. This is a very difficult thing to do. There's something about it, and Jeffrey Sirk argues that this is not the art. This is a record of the art now. So I think about this in many ways for debate education. The biggest question is, how do we take good debate, or debate that we want our students to do, off the wall and put it on the floor? How do we make it accessible for them? How do we make them feel comfortable walking across it? They can't hurt it. It's part of the process. Process over product is what the don't know teacher, what the teacher of uncertainty, comfort with uncertainty, puts first. Go ahead, walk across again. Anything that happens in a practice debate, anything that happens in a competition debate, is a valuable part of the art. All of it, all of it, all of it. The thing that's the final result, the trophy, the well-earned victory, the thing that they won, beating that team they want to beat, that's all the stuff that we put on the wall. But we can't forget that it wasn't always on the wall. We can't forget that it's not precious in that way. In fact, debate videos. My students like to watch a lot of debate videos. And that's a very, very tough thing to bring into your teaching practice because they start to want to copy them. They start to want to be those people. They start to mirror that style. And although mimesis, right, the mimic, is a Greek word mimesis, which means trying to be like or copying the copy or trying to simulate, that's an early and very, very, very easy way to teach. In fact, a lot of people in Ed Psych, it's one of the first things you learn. It's like, imitation. That's an old medieval style of teaching, is to try to copy the great works. And Jeffrey Sirk talks about how if we went to the Metropolitan Museum, we would see art students in there copying the great works. I'm sure you've seen that. If you've gone on a weekday in the morning, they have their little easel set up and they're copying the great works. He says that's good for technique and that's good for technical appreciation. But how good is that for creating art? So in debate, how good is that for creating really imaginative, powerful arguments? For giving our students the tools to say, I can make this. You can't make this, but you can make this. Right? You can make art, you can't make that. It's on the wall, but you can make this. Walk across it, you can't hurt it. That's something you got to put into your head for teaching debate. We get that from Long Islander Jackson Pollock, who that might be probably the most positive story I can tell about Jackson Pollock, actually. Is that one there. So the final thought I will give you as far as that is that we have to be careful about what we valorize in the classroom as good debate and what we say is bad debate. And we also have to always demonstrate intellectual practice. I don't think it's possible for anyone to be an intellectual. I think intellectual is a practice. It's possible to be healthy if you go to the gym every day. Right? It's possible to look fit if you go to the gym every day. But that's not something you just are as a state. That's something one practices every day. You can model that intellectual practice for your students by saying, I don't know. This might be the first time in their lives they've heard a teacher say, I don't know. I don't know. Let's see if we can find out together how it is. So the only teachers in the world, I think, who teach debate like I do, or how I'm suggesting that we should teach it today, are Buddhist Zen masters who say, I don't know, I teach don't know, and they also tell their students, hey, let go of that. Let go. Just let go, and everything will be fine. And they say, okay, I've let go, what now? And then they say, well, let go of that. This is a great way of approaching what it is that we do, because really, we don't know what's going to happen this year. You don't know what arguments your students are going to make. You don't know what's going to happen in these debates. Let go. You can't hurt it. Walk across it. Let the fire burn. And always make sure you're playing a beautiful game. These, I think, are the mantra that I kind of try to push across when I'm teaching debate to myself, and I hope you found it thoughtful as well.